Hello, beautiful souls. Today we'll be diving into the framework I've created to help people change their behaviors and mindset when it comes to money, so you can drop away scarcity ways of thinking and create greater prosperity for yourself. If you haven't listened to my Root Chakra podcast, be sure to listen to that first, because today we're going to be diving into the second of the seven primary chakras, the sacral chakra. Specifically, we'll be talking about how imbalances in the sacral chakra can affect your relationship with money. If you're new to my work, I also want you to know that I explore all of what we're covering here in my book that comes out June 16th, 2020, called The Mindful Millionaire. I also go into the healing practices that you'll use to help you for whatever comes up as you listen to this podcast. We'll be going into some of that, but you'll want to go much deeper probably after you listen to this. One of the ways that I've heard the chakras being described that I think you might find helpful is that every living being is far more than a physical being. We are energy beings. And what that means is that there's a system of energy fields that interact with each other and the environment that we live in. The Taoists called this field the Tao. The yogis call it prana. The Buddhists call it Brahma. We are all part of this very same universal energy field, and we receive nourishment from it and we give it back to it. When we believe that we are separate from everyone else, we distort our reality into believing in a limited experience of reality. Having a physical body is part of being conscious in the physical world, and money is just part of that experience. For that reason, most of us think about ourselves and our money as being separate, and yet this is very limited and doesn't help us because it results in great suffering because we cannot see beyond this way of thinking, and it causes us to feel alone and not supported by the universal energy that we're actually a part of. It can take many years of contemplation and meditation to fully understand what I'm sharing here, but we can think about the chakras as being subfields that compose the subtle energy within each of us. These subfields get blocked and distorted, otherwise, the way I speak about it is being imbalanced. And when that happens, it's what prevents us from seeing the connection we have with everything in the energetic field. It's also what prevents us from seeing ourselves as whole and complete beings. Disturbances in the subtle energy prevent us from experiencing other people fully, from experiencing ourselves deeply, and having satisfying relationships with other people, as well as things like money. They are what allow us to experience a state of wholeness through self-remembrance and the reunion of all parts of ourselves coming together, including our connection with the divine. An example of how this works is to imagine that when the chakras are imbalanced, it's like we're plants in a greenhouse and with very dirty windows on the greenhouse so that very little light is able to get in. And the light is what we depend on to thrive and grow and experience joy in this life. And so with our work around the chakras, we're cleaning the windows of the greenhouse to allow the light to come in. And this is why it's so important that we get to the root of the problem of why the windows are dirty in the first place. We do this by diving into each of the chakras to better understand how they relate to our lives and to our money. I invite you to feel your way through this conversation, because what I am sharing has been developed over 20 years and tens of thousands of hours of meditation and contemplation. I may make it seem easy to the mind, but there's so much depth to this work that it's hard to convey it in words. However, when you sink into your heart and into your sacral chakra and you listen with your feeling, you will be able to understand these esoteric and hidden relationships much better and much more easily. What I'm sharing with you is not easy to describe. I am doing my best. It is challenging to say the least. Every time I record one of these videos, I think to myself, or record a podcast, that there's so much more that I wanted to explain. And yet the words don't always come because, again, it's a feeling sense more than it is a thinking sense. So I do my best. So I consider the sacral chakra as your feeling lens. The second chakra regulates how you feel about money, desire, and pleasure. If you're struggling with the sacral chakra, you are afraid of being hurt emotionally, indirectly or directly, while attempting to have your most precious needs met in life. What this means is that you're afraid of feeling your feelings. Feelings are different than emotions. Emotions are very oriented to like those quick responses that we have when something happens to us. But what I'm talking about is the feelings underneath all of it, what I call your feeling sense. So when we get disconnected from our feeling sense, we're not able to feel life and go through the experiences of life in the way that I think we're built to be able to handle and to benefit from. So the residual effect of this fear of feeling as it pertains to money manifests as a concern that you're not worthy enough to get your spending and debt under control, or maybe you're so rigid that you're tight-fisted with your money. This comes as this disconnection with your ability to feel radiates out into your life. And what I also know is that most of us have a sense that something's not right. We're just not sure, how to identify it and how to make a change in our lives. Without feeling it, you can't change it. The sacral chakra is located at the area of the lower abdomen near the sexual organs of the body. It's represented by the color orange. In addition to the feelings of unworthiness, it's connected to your relationships and personal sensitivities. Similar to what happens with the root chakra, if our early warning systems in life are put on high alert early on, we're far more likely to avoid situations in which our feeling sense may be threatened. When we're young and we're going through the terrible twos, we're learning how to crawl and walk and explore the world for the first time. And there's a good chance that we're causing a lot of disruption in our homes, pushing the limits of our parents' patience, right? Some more than others. But one moment we're getting into something, and the next we're having a temper tantrum because we're not getting what we want. And depending upon your personality, we might scream or cry or emote in other ways. And if during this time we're chastised, criticized, shamed for our feelings, there's a good chance that we'll adopt the belief that our feelings are not acceptable. And as babies, our feeling is everything. It's how we communicate with the external world. And so when we're hungry or tired or want something, we would express through feelings. And so it comes down to our caregivers and their ability to help us through that experience of feeling our feels. When our feelings are nurtured by our caregivers, we gain a well-rounded emotional life. When they are not, we can find ourselves negating our feelings later in life. And when we negate them, we cannot help with ending up with challenges that orient to the health of our bodies, our relationships, and our money because of being cut off to this internal navigation system. So when the sacral chakra is balanced, you feel a strong sense of emotional intelligence because you're able to feel what's happening inside of you. And it helps you be in touch with your feelings, almost like a psychic awareness of knowing exactly what's wrong in any given moment, because your feeling sense allows you to see it quickly. This level of self-understanding allows you to have healthy boundaries in place for how you engage with others, how you engage with money and other resources, and how you avoid situations of codependency. And as a result, you're able to be vulnerable with others while feeling a strong sense of your own worth and value in the world. These aspects of being get reflected in how you save your money, how you're able to pay off debt, how you take good care of your money. This is because the sacral chakra plays an important role in the flow and distribution of the energy that we spoke about earlier. Quotes that can help you get a feel for what this means is Harold Sherman said, the more you depend on forces outside of yourself, the more you're dominated by them. Gita Berlin said, if you know you want it, have it. And I think she's speaking about the energy of having, right? Allowing yourself to have things. The Dalai Lama said, there's a saying in Tibet that at the door of the miserable rich man sleeps the contented beggar. The point of this saying is not that poverty is a virtue, but that happiness does not come with wealth, but from setting limits to one's desires and living within those limits with satisfaction. David Bach says, in fact, what determines your wealth is not how much you make, but how much you keep of what you make. Oprah said, when you define yourself by the things that you can acquire, rather than see what you really need to be happy and fulfilled, you're not just living beyond your means, you're overextending yourself. You're living a lie. And finally, Dave Ramsey said, being able to delay pleasure for a greater result is a sign of maturity. So when your feeling lens is clouded by scarcity, you may feel one of two things. So I mentioned this, the overactive chakra in the sacral area means that you're going to be hoarding money, saving money, denying yourself pleasure, just like you can't allow yourself to experience the joy of life. And so one way you do that is by like saving way more than you probably need to. Okay. So it's like the obsession with that. On the other hand, the underactive chakra is about, so much disconnected from your feeling, not looking at money, not paying attention to how you're spending, not paying attention to how you're paying off debt, not paying attention to the fact that your income and your spending are not in alignment with each other. So there are many ways why you might feel the way you do. And it could have to do with things that happened when you were growing up. It can also have to do with things that happened in young adulthood, all of which I dive into in my book, The Mindful Millionaire. One story that evidences how someone can have an imbalanced sacral chakra is with Barbara. Now, she came to me for assistance several years ago. She was working full-time as a pediatric nurse. Despite her inspired attitude, hard-working approach to life, her family finances were a mess. She and her husband knew that no matter what they did, it never seemed like there was enough money at the end of the month left over. And just like a lot of parents, there were a lot of, they had several children. They felt the responsibilities to make sure that they had what they needed. And in the end, even though they had a good, healthy income, it was not enough, especially to take care of the obligations that always seemed to be growing. Early on, we discussed the fact that there was a spending problem that was getting in the way of them turning their finances around. I could tell that if we did not focus on the root problem that could help her understand why the financial circumstances on the outside were happening, then there was a good chance that she would just try and fix the outer experiences with money, but a new problem would continue to arise and another. So in the cases of the people I work with, much of the time, we need to go into their backstory so that we can see how the inner struggles are showing up in their financial challenges. And that's why these stories are so powerful and helpful. As I share Barbara's story with you, you might notice some similarities and you might not. The point is to allow you to feel into what does resonate and perhaps understand better if the sacral chakra is something that you are dealing with yourself. When Barbara was young, she remembers having a distinct feeling that her mom cared more about her reputation and status than anything else. She didn't like this side of her mom and knew it ran deep and was part of her family, the fact that they had had wealth for many generations. An ongoing area of conflict between Barbara and her mom was a steady flow of criticism that her mom sent in her direction, partly because Barbara was really different than her mom. Barbara was very free-spirited. She didn't care about reputation and status. And so they would be at odds with each other in many cases. When I asked her about her mother's money story, Barbara shared that her mother had often sacrificed her own welfare and happiness for those in her family, choosing not to work outside of the home once she got married. She devoted much of her time to taking care of kids and being a wife. She remembered that they'd go on vacations and her mom would stay and be responsible for cooking and cleaning while everybody else went and had a good time. It turns out that her mom had dealt with a lot of pain growing up, including being abused by her father. And her father had run the home with sort of a very stoic, strong, stern personality, and very much abided by the idea that women were second-class citizens. All of this combined had caused Barbara's mother to become very subservient to the men in her life, and at the same time very distant from her own feelings of pain. Barbara's father, on the other hand, had a very different childhood. He had grown up with parents who worked as teachers and taught him to deeply appreciate the value of working hard and earning money and pursuing his dreams. He attended medical school, became a successful doctor in a prestigious hospital. Eventually, he realized that he would rather have his own small practice, but this was to the dismay of Barbara's mom, who told him that if he gave up this esteemed position, she would divorce him. And true to her word, once he left and made the switch, she quickly filed for divorce. The divorce was really painful for Barbara because it felt like her mother had no interest in her father outside of his career status. And while Barbara's father was fun and carefree, there was also a side of him that came out in intense stress, particularly, instigated through the divorce. But what happened was he would go from being mild-mannered to extreme rage in just a few moments, and it would catch her off guard and made her very, very sensitive about being around her father and speaking up about things that were important to her. So Barbara later in life found herself drawn to men who were often not good with their finances. Her first husband had been attracted to her family's status and had big dreams about what would happen together. But unfortunately, he got them into a lot of financial trouble. And one day she realized that she would have to leave him because it was only getting worse. Thankfully, her father helped her financially get out of that marriage. And later she would meet her second husband, who's a successful entrepreneur. And like I said, even with the strong income of both of them working, they're still finding themselves in over their head and having way more expenses than the income that's coming in. I explained from both of her parents that she learned it was not safe to feel her feelings. Instead, it was more comfortable for her to protect herself by not feeling the intensity of your father's rage and your mother's pain. This resulted in negating parts of yourself while focusing on the needs of others. And I understand helping others brings you great joy, but it's worthwhile to notice how easy it is to put others' needs before your own. I explained to Barbara that you've been taught how to not listen to your feelings, and you've seen money as something that has the potential to hurt people. And this likely has a lot to do with the avoidance of the money. The more fear we feel and the more likely we are to avoid feeling that fear is what I see showing up in the sacral chakra. Fear of change is one of the products of this constriction, which prevents the desire to examine the darkness inside. Carl Jung observed, emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. There can be no transferring of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. The imbalance itself limits the emotional range a person can feel, which distorts and undermines a sense of what can be healed. In Barbara's case, her past led her to question her own right to feel what she was feeling and instead just do what was expected of her. This led her to doubt her own sense of worthiness and her ability to desire the things she most wants. Desire is the creative force within the universe. Desire is a force that sets things in motion to bring about its own fulfillment. Only those who become what I call passion conscious are able to follow their dreams, and become also those who become money conscious are those who create the wealth that they're seeking. So to become conscious means that the mind must become so saturated with a desire to experience something that you actually see yourself in possession of it. The more you want the things, the stronger the desire must be. And what happens is, back to this energy thought, that if everything in the universe is energy, when you move energy with great desire, you cannot help but see changes in your life. Energy moves where our attention goes. So to be able to give your attention to that which you want is what is gained by balancing and harmonizing your sacral chakra. And this is what was missing in Barbara's life. At her most stressful times, when she was worried about having enough money to pay her bills, Barbara would find herself looking first to where she could give something up for the benefit of others. Cutting off her feelings became so familiar that she forgot she even had them. And to those around her, it would seem as if she was doing fine and a very generous person. Yet when the things got really intense, she would become so physically rigid that it would manifest into physical problems. So Barbara's money story was filled with mixed messages that led to the creation of some beliefs, namely, it's wrong to see money as important and helpful. It's good to forsake my own happiness for the happiness of my family. Hide, bury, and conceal your feelings, or it could cause problems. Following your passion gets you into trouble and causes relationships to end. Men are the primary breadwinners, and they have all the power with the finances. So during our work together and going through the I Prosper process, Barbara's hidden beliefs were allowed to come into the light so she could understand the root of these challenges, coming to see how it had not been safe to feel her feelings, and just seeing that, and then doing forgiveness work and inner child work, she was able to drop away this fear and resentment and the blocks to her feelings. So as she could do more of this, she began to own her feelings and take greater responsibility with the financial decisions that were coming up in her life. After our sessions, she became more in touch with her feelings than ever before, and noticing the difference between them, feelings as a way to know how she felt about, her finances, about struggles, about challenges, and being able to give voice to them, becoming more communicative with her family. And that allowed better decisions to be made in the short term and the longer term. Barbara's relationship also was able to improve to the point where her mother no longer had unconscious control over Barbara's thoughts and feelings, which allowed Barbara to stand her ground when her mother would trigger feelings from the past. And so just it's amazing how you do one thing is how you do everything. And when you start to change your thoughts about your feelings and you start to own them, you're able to navigate life so much easier. So through this process, Barbara stepped more fully into her authentic self. And by doing that, she learned just how powerful of a person she really is. And the more confidence she gained, the more powerful she became in creating the financial life she had always wanted to be living. A few quotes that really hit home the point of the sacral chakra coming into balance is Dave Ramsey says, the decision to go into debt alters the course and condition of your life. You no longer own it. You are owned. Oprah said, having the best things is no substitute for having the best life. When you can let go of the desire to acquire, you know you're on your way. Dave Ramsey said, change is painful. Few people have the courage to seek out change. Many people won't change until the pain of where they are exceeds the pain of change. And finally, Oprah said, when you free yourself from debt, you create space to purchase with purpose, to add things to your life that are meaningful. So, what matters most is that you're in balance and control of wherever you find yourself. A person earning $10,000 a month who spends $15,000 a month affirms his or her inability to accept circumstances and to create balance in life. She's saying, I will create my life according to my ego rather than truth, which is $10,000 a month. The imbalance shows up even when she earns more money. Spending goes up accordingly, still running a deficit. It is the emotion of the imbalance that is causing the problem. And people can feel your imbalance. To give money, we want to be in balance. And this is why you never want to go to a bank when you need money. They see the imbalance and they won't approve you for a loan. It shows up on paper, it shows up in your energy. A person needs to create a wave of energy that is empowering to others, not overpowering to others, which is when it pushes people away. If this is bringing things up for you, I want you to know that I've devoted an entire book to help you sort through these issues. It's partly about what's happening and why and how you free yourself from the patterns of the past. And even by listening to this, perhaps a few times, you're bringing into your awareness for yourself what has happened in the past and how the sacral chakra can be brought into balance. Just by knowing more about it, it already begins the healing work. So now I invite you to think more deeply about your sacral chakra, what patterns you've been evidencing that are similar to what we've been sharing, what you're ready to let go of so you can begin anew. Practically speaking, I suggest that if you are feeling the call to work on your sacral chakra, it'd be a good time to take stock of your finances. Number one, taking time to inventory how you're spending money, writing up all your expenses, totaling them, perhaps looking at all of last year's expenses and putting them into the major spending categories, then dividing that gross number by 12 to get an idea of what you're spending on a monthly basis. Even that oftentimes is so surprising to people that they change their behavior very, very fast. Like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was spending that much on restaurants. And, we can eat at home and save $500,000 a month. I mean, it's crazy when we do the inventory, how much more empowered we become. We can also set up an automatic savings account where you sweep money from your checking account every month automatically into your savings account, which is a great way to continue and build up your savings muscles. Finally, you can listen to my sacral chakra meditation in the show notes. Listen to it a few times. Like I said, listen to this episode a few times. Allow yourself to see what epiphanies come up and reveal themselves for you. And if you have not already taken the Chakra and Money quiz, you can go to wealthclinic.com and find out which chakra is likely out of balance as it pertains to money. And I'm so glad that you've listened today, and I hope you find this information very helpful. Namaste.